Planning a trip to Portugal? Whether you're exploring Lisbon, surfing in Ediceto, or road tripping through the Alentejo, staying connected is essential. I use Airalo every time I travel, even on some surfboat trips, adventures to the Maldives. So when we connected to collaborate, I was really genuinely happy. Airalo's eSIMs give you instant data the moment you land in a foreign country. No queues, no physical SIM cards, just seamless, reliable coverage. Travel smarter, stay connected, download Airalo before your next adventure. Follow this link in the show notes to get connected today. This is Justin West for Podcast Portugal. I'd like to extend a really warm welcome to Brhan.
Hello.
Hey. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the untold story of Ethiopian Jews. You describe yourself as a storyteller first and foremost. What originally pushed you to start sharing the story of Beta Israel community publicly? And did you realize how important that voice would become?
Wow. So, first of all, when I realized it is important to share the Ethiopian Jewish narrative, first of all, when I was in high school, I was never taught about the immigration of Ethiopian Jews. I've learned about the immigration of other Jewish communities, but not for Ethiopian Jews. And when I grew up, I never thought it's that important until October 7th happened. And when two of my friends died on October 7th, while they were trying to save people. And one of them was an Ethiopian Jew who moved to Israel when he was young. And I opened my Instagram and I saw that I am a white colonizer and that I need to go back to Africa and that I'm not belong to the land of Israel. And I understood that there are groups of people who are taking my history and my story of my people, and they start to share lies, to share misconceptions, to share misinformation about my community. And I started to share my life experience in Israel and how is to live under threat and how is to live under running to the shelter and you have only 15 seconds, especially if you live in the south of Israel. And I saw so much hate, and I saw other people sharing information about Ethiopian Jews that this is not true. And I understood in that moment that if I am not going to share this story, no one will do this. And if I am not going to share my heritage, my traditions, how people really got into Israel, no one is going to do this. And even if people have good intentions and they're trying to share some information, it's not always accurate. So that really shaped me while I was in fear in the war, while I was concerning about what's the life going to be in Israel and mourning about my friends that I've lost. I understood that I need to do something, that I need to share my story. And that's how I start to share traditions of Ethiopian Jews, if it's how they celebrated this in Ethiopia, how their Jewish tradition were in Ethiopia, what's unique in their Jewish traditions, what about the activists that have brought Jews to Israel, Ethiopian Jews to Israel, which no one is talking about them, and this is why I came to speak about them, to change the Ethiopian Israeli Jewish narrative. And that really affected me. And this is what I'm doing also now on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, and let's. I'm going to rewind a little bit for the listeners, and how I found you was on Instagram because I was very interested in researching the topic of Ethiopian Jews. And now my only window, or my initial window into this community, was from a movie, basically, on Netflix, called the Red Sea Diving Center, and that was really focused on some Mossad agents that helped some people from Ethiopia stay in what I can only describe really as concentration camps, or I don't know what else you could call them. They were staying in refugee camps in Sudan, and then they were trying to, with the help of the Israeli government, trying to get them to move to Israel. Now, we've discussed previously that the film, some of the major critics of the film, and some of the major issues that led me to research more, was that I wanted to know the story of the Ethiopian people themselves, because the story very much focused on the narrative of the Mossad agents being the sort of heroes of the moment, when actually the story of the Ethiopian people, the moving and leaving their homes in Ethiopia, and putting up with the camps in Sudan, and being hunted by these, I don't know what you can call them, soldiers or whatever, Sudanese forces. And then, and then their story carries on in Israel. There is many people now in Israel from Ethiopian Jewish descent, and how has that story continued? And so I researched it, and I came across you, and I'm super happy to talk to you about it. And your content combines both culture, identity, lifestyle, spirituality, and sort of storytelling. And what is the essence of the story here that I did not see in the Red Sea Diving Center movie? What am I missing?
Oh, so first of all, I want to say that the Mossad was doing incredible job, incredible risky mission in order to bring the Ethiopian Jews to Israel. But what it's missing is that the people who risked their life was the Ethiopian Jews. We called ourselves Bet Israel. So I'll start from the beginning. For thou- thousands of years, Ethiopian Jews have been dreaming to return to Jerusalem, right? And the Ethiopian Jews dreamt of Zion, prayed for Jerusalem, prayed toward Jerusalem, and the ancient Jewish traditions were practiced as it was in the time of the first temple. So really, the desire and the yearning to Jerusalem was something that it was center and meaningful to the Beta Israel community. For example, because we love Jerusalem so much, we called our daughters Jerusalem, or Jerus, which means Jerusalem. Imagine like people call their daughters, I don't know, New York, or
Rome.
like important Rome,
Yeah.
exactly, Rome, or Lisbon. That's the capital city.
Yeah.
Lisbon. So because you were yearning to return to Lisbon, because for thousands of years you have connection to that land, and you want to go and you want to return to that land. And then activists, Ethiopian activists, and the spiritual leaders, the Kesim, which they are our leaders in the community. They are guiding the community through spiritual and religious practices. They give advices to people. They're making peace between uh, friends, between couples, and they have an important role. And also Ethiopian Jewish activists like Avram Yirdai, like the case Uri Ben Baruch, and among more and more. They were the one that they were opening a gate and opening a way to Ethiopian Jews to come. And imagine that you have a way to get to Lisbon. So now you're waking up and you start to sell all your properties, all the things that you have, all the things that you own, you start to sell it. And sometimes because there is no time, because someone can come to your home and say to yo, tomorrow there is an option to come to Jerusalem. Are you coming or not? And you have two options. What would I do? Should I come? Should I not come? And you leave all your stuff, all your house, your cows, your sheep, your properties, and you just leave it like this, and you go in the middle of the night to nowhere, to a journey, that in the end you will go to Jerusalem. And what happened in that journey? 4,000 Ethiopian Jews unfortunately didn't survive and died. And people always think about the Mossad, how he rescued the Jews, but Ethiopian Jews rescued themselves because they were the one that needed to go they need to go miles on miles on miles in the desert with the danger of I forgot how to say that word, thieves.
Yeah, bandits
You are
and rogue soldiers, and you know.
and sometimes the tour guide that you took to yourself, he's scamming you and he's taking all your money and he brings you to the middle of the desert, and that's it. He leaves you. Or sometimes if you want to go to move to another city, you need to give your wife to another man for one night in order to move. And sometimes kids were taken, and sometimes kids were unfortunately dying from there because there was no food. There was no water, and you take what you have and you just continue on the way. You continue to walk miles and miles and miles just because you have the yearning to go back to Jerusalem. And then Jews, Ethiopian Jews, went from the north of Ethiopia to Sudan, but there was also ways from before that from Kenya and Djibouti, where Ethiopian Jewish activists were trying to get away from Kenya and from Djibouti to bring Jews to Ethiopia. But the authorities have discovered that and put those Ethiopian Jews activists into jail. So they closed that gate. So you need to understand, Ethiopian Jews have tried to return to Israel before the Moses operation, what we know about the movie. They tried other ways. So sometimes it was succeeding, like what we know about what we have in the movie, but sometimes it didn't. For example, what I said to you, in Kenya, in Djibouti, they were trying to bring Ethiopian Jews and then to fly them to Israel.
I mean, it just feels like such a strong impulse. So you're saying like the urge, it's a spiritual journey that motivated the community to move from Ethiopia to Jerusalem. It was not something that was happening. They were not persecuted in Ethiopia, or there was problems in Ethiopia that also motivated them to try to find a better life, like many immigrants do to this day.
Yeah, so Ethiopian Jews wanted to return to Zion, to Jerusalem, because they were yearning to return to their homeland. And when we're talking about persecution, it depends on the time in history. So, for example, in the 15th century until the 17th century, there were strong persecution and trying to convert Jews to Christianity. And you can see that the Emperor Isaac was telling the Ethiopian Jews that you have two options, or that you're converting to Christianity and I am letting you to keep your land, or that you keep to be Jewish, you keep to maintain your Jewish life, and then I'm taking your land, nothing belongs to you anymore. And it was very difficult because imagine that your land is everything and you maintain your Jewish life and you have a home and you have fields, and now you're waking up day after and you don't have the home, doesn't belong to you. The agriculture doesn't belong to you. The fields with the food doesn't belong to you anymore? How are you going to feed your children? How are you going to feed your family? What about your community if the land does not belong to you? So where do you go?
Mm.
And the community faced struggles, and they needed to make a hard decision. So part of the community said, okay, we are not going to convert. You can take our land. And then they have called the name, derogatory name called Felasha, means you are invader. You are not even belong here. And the other ones said, maybe this time will pass and we will have a better future. Let's maintain our Jewish life secretly. And when we're going outside, we will behave like Christians, like what happened to other Jewish communities in Europe, like Jews in Portugal, the same, Jews in Spain. So that happened to other Jews outside Israel as well.
Mm.
And they faced persecution. They called the Jews, for example, Buddha or Kaila. It means that you are eating human and children, and it's the same stereotype that goes about Jews also in Europe. When you hear about the bloodline labels, history, in back then in the history, Jews have been blamed that they were eating kids and they were using the blood to to eat it with the bread on Passover, with the matzah on Passover. And of course it's false, and because they saw us less than human, because you have stereotypes, such a hard stereotypes and difficult stereotypes about Jews, so that strengthened the idea of behaving badly toward Jews. So if they're eating humans, of course that I can kill them. Of course that I can take their land. Of course that I can abuse them. And this minor community have suffered throughout the history, especially in Ethiopia.
Mm.
Before Christianity came, there was a legacy, and there was an authority for Ethiopian Jews. They were ruling Ethiopia, and not a lot of know this. Have you heard about the Gidonim?
No.
So the Gidonim. So outside Israel, I think it's the only country that Jews ruled over Ethiopia. It calls the Gidonim Kingdom, and because they were losing their control, so the Christianity came, and then the persecution of Jews had become more severe. And you see, that's what happened throughout the history.
Mm.
But when we're talking about coming to Israel, remember, because of those persecution, Jews needed to be in isolation to escape the major life in big cities. So they were living in a rural places, such as at the north, where it has more nature, it has more water sources, so you can keep your Jewish traditions. And because of that, they were isolated, and they didn't know about the other Jewish communities all around the world. They have thought that they are the last Jews that exist in the world,
Oh wow.
until
wow.
until there was a researcher that went through the Nile River, and he met them, and then they didn't believe that he's Jewish as well, and he said, yes, I'm also Jewish, and he said Shema Israel, and they were surprised.
Hmm.
But when I'm talking about the 70s, 80s, Jews had Jews have a kind of like good life there, and they just chose to leave everything and to return to Jerusalem.
Mm. And what's the
And
original history of the Jewish community in Ethiopia? Is it something that is a history told? Is there a story there of how did a group of Jews end up in Ethiopia, or were they already there, or how was that? How did that happen?
oh, that's a great question. So there are a lot of researchers and big question of how Ethiopian Jews existed in Ethiopia, how Jews ended up in Ethiopia. And I'm going to share with you my my community story,
Okay,
which
nice.
my community story that they have, where there was a group in Israel. Okay, so there's Jacob, and Jacob has the 12 tribes, the 12 children, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened is that when there was a fight between the tribes, the part of the tribes came to Dan tribe and told them, "Yo, let's come with us and fight with us. Fight with us against other brothers and sisters." And in order to avoid brotherhood, and in order to avoid fighting between tribes, they decided to leave Israel land. And they went from Israel to Egypt. And they have settled there for years. And the story tells that because they didn't have a good life in Egypt and they were persecuted there as well, Dan tribe went down through the Nile River and ended up in one of the sources, which is Agam Tana Lake. And you see that Ethiopian Jews mainly lived in that area. And that's the main source of how Ethiopian Jews ended up in Ethiopia. There's also the story of King Solomon and Queen Sheba, where they said that Queen Sheba came from Ethiopia to test King Solomon if he knows about his wisdom. And they had a child together, and the child, his name is Menelik. And when Menelik returned back to Ethiopia after he came to visit his dad sending him with accompanying people from 1,000 people from each tribe to escort his own child. And they're going back to Ethiopia, and then they settling in Ethiopia.
Okay.
But what the most important thing is, because there is the big displacement of Jews after the second destruction of the temple. But Ethiopian Jews were not there. They were exiled before that story. And because of that, they were maintaining and preserving an ancient Jewish traditions, as it's not modern as how Jews practice Judaism today. It's more ancient. And when the community came to Israel, they accepted that the temple it's still built and there's still temple. And when they saw that, they cried. When they saw it's not exist, they cried. And for example, the Jewish life, when a woman has her period, she's going to a house outside the village with other women, and the whole village take care of her. They bring her food, they bring her water, they take care of her kids. She really like on a vacation. And in Israel, they they didn't found they didn't find a house that can be as it was practiced in Ethiopia. And the spiritual leaders had crisis because what is this? We came to Israel
It's
and
so
we
different.
came with our own traditions and we preserve them under persecution and under missionary. And now you're telling me that you're not practicing this anymore. Now you're telling me that you have changed the way you practice Judaism. And that caused a lot of sorrow to the spiritual leaders, and some of them died because of sorrow and sadness. And you can see there are a lot of differences, but one of the beautiful things that the Ethiopian Jewish community celebrates, it's a holiday called Sigd. And that holiday, during the time of persecution in Ethiopia, the spiritual leaders saw how much it's hard to maintain the Jewish life and how much Jews started to assimilate. So they decide to do a holiday in order to bring back the Jewish strength and the Jewish life. So they went to a high mountain and read from the Torah, Oraita, and while they were reading the Torah, they were reminding to the people how much is important to preserve the Jewish life and don't forget where they're coming from. And one day we will return to Jerusalem. And they were facing also towards Jerusalem. And you can see that we also practicing this today also in Jerusalem itself. And we go to a mountain, Anativ. It's in Jerusalem, and it's facing towards the western wall. And we pray, and we are happy that we are here in Israel, and we are practicing the Judaism with the rest of the Jewish world. But yes, at the beginning, it was very difficult for the Israeli government to believe that we are Jews, because how it exists, Black Jews. It's so weird. We've never seen it. And because of pressure of activists from North America, from from Ethiopia, for example, Ferede Aklum, he went to Ethiopia to do protests in order to raise awareness about Ethiopian Jews who want to do Aliyah. And Susan Pollack, that came from Maine, a country in United States, to Ethiopia to help Jews to come to Israel. And we have Rabbi the Kiss, Uri Baruch, that also helped with operations and moving to Israel. And you have so many, Avraham Yirdai and Rachamim Elazar, that was having a radio and spoke about Ethiopian Jews and about raising awareness. And we had activists that were speaking with the Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir in order to put pressure to bring Ethiopian Jews to Israel. And we had, at the same time, funding from American Jews to help them to bring Ethiopian Jews to Israel. So to delete that story and then to say, oh, the Mossad came and saved the Ethiopian Jews, that's not true. There is a whole process, a whole system that have worked in order to bring the Mossad that we appreciate. I appreciate. I'm not saying that I'm not appreciating them, but let's talk facts. There were more than 10 activists that helped and put a pressure on the Israel government, on the Jewish community in America, in order to bring the Ethiopian Jews to Israel.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you there because I need to say to the listeners that Aliyah is like the journey you're talking about to Israel. And let's recap a little bit. So the Ethiopian Jewish community has a line of descent from Jacob. That's correct, and one of the tribes
From the tribe of Dan. From the tribe of Dan, and Dan is the son of Jacob.
Okay, and that story that emanates from the area which we now know as Israel and Jerusalem, right? And the Temple of Solomon is actually part of the structure which is like the basis of many of the other religious buildings that share that same space almost, right? I only know this because I know the Crusaders were called the Templar Knights because they were given by the king of the time, the Christian king at the time. They were given a place to stay, which was thought to be the old ruins of the Temple of Solomon. So that, yeah, it's a really fascinating story. So they left Jerusalem because they wanted to avoid any confrontation with the other tribes and warring against brothers and sisters, and ultimately, and they found no peace in Egypt, and so they found peace in an area which is sort of part of the Nile. I think it's at the beginning of the Nile, right?
Right.
Fertile land, and they managed to keep that tradition, the original traditions of the Jewish spirituality alive for centuries. I'm assuming centuries, and yeah, what a fascinating story. And at all of that time, there is a spirit. Now I'm only learning about this. There is this spiritual journey called Aliyah, which is a return to Jerusalem, to the homeland.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. The term aliyah, it's going up. And when we say aliyah, it's going up to return to our homeland, to be back at home.
Wow, that's amazing. And it took centuries. Wow. I mean, and it's hard for it's hard for somebody outside really to understand what this means. I mean, we see this whole area of the Middle East and so much conflict in modern times, and I don't think it's just been in modern times. I think it's been historically this conflict all over the world, and it always seems to be centered in Jerusalem, um, and I think we, as observers, like I'm an observer, we I don't think we really understand the emotions and the strength of feeling and the spirituality that people have for this area.
Right. The connection, it's much more deep. The Jewish nation and the Jewish people has this connection to that land, because Abraham was promised by God that he going to have this land to his sons, to Isaac, his son. And Isaac is the father of Jacob, and Jacob is the father of the 12 tribes. So there is a deep connection throughout the years to Israel, and the Jews were yearning to return to Israel from all around the world. And the target that you are living in Israel is to be a model of an excellence to the rest of the nations. So,
It's like
of course,
a
that the people.
utopia, like a utopia.
Yes, exactly. And to see how much diverse is the Jewish people who lives right now in Israel, and how much he lives in peaceful time, in peaceful energy. And, even the 12 tribes came from 6 months. So you see that even the 12 tribes themselves, they were pretty diverse. And now that we came to Israel, after being in exile for almost 2,500 years, Jews have brought their traditions that they were practicing in the land that they have stayed. So Jews from Yemen has slight different traditions than the Jews from Poland, and the Jews from Poland have different traditions from the Jews of Portugal, and they have different traditions than the Jews in Morocco or in Iraq or in India. Or it's so much diverse. It's so much diverse, and there is more to the story. There are still Jews in, for example, in Tanzania, in South Africa, in other countries that they will one day will come to Israel. And yeah, that's the dream. And we are here living in the society that it's so much diverse, so much. When you come to Israel, you see so many faces, and you think, oh wow, I thought about Israel that it's only white Jews, white European colonizers, which is not true. Most of the people here, more than 50% of the people, they are, let's say, brownish people, Jews who came from Morocco, from Yemen, from Iraq, from India, from Algeria, from Libya, from Ethiopia, from many countries, and we live peacefully. Of course, we have disagreement, and when you're coming with your own traditions, and they are coming with their own traditions, sometimes it's create tension. But I'm here with my own traditions, and I'm going to stay with them. And you can stay with your own traditions.
Mm. And you yourself, your family came from Ethiopia as part of and you are a descendant of one of or did you actually travel yourself on that journey?
So I didn't, and my parents didn't do the journey. They came afterwards because of because of the death of so many Ethiopian Jews along the way to Israel. A lot of other Jews didn't want to do the journey because they've heard that people have died, and then decided to stay. And when they'll have a better chance, they will come. And my parents made that. I was born in Ethiopia in Addis Ababa, and I moved to Israel when I was a baby. And my parents, it was important to them to share the story of the rest of our people. And my dad told me that we have a family member that made this journey from Ethiopia to Sudan. And I have friends that their parents have this did this journey as well. And you can see also, um, first of all, the Memorial Day of Ethiopian Jews that have passed away through Sudan. It's within 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And this community carry a lot of sadness and trauma, and it's collective trauma. And you can see sometimes it's hard for them to speak about it. Sometimes you discover more people who have died along the way and they were missing, and only in the recent years now we know that they didn't survive and they died. So really, Ethiopian Jews have sacrificed a lot in order to come to Israel, and we are now less than the 2% in the Israel population, and we are succeeding in every field. If it's the entertainment, if it's in business, if it's in the um, court system, if it's in the police, if it's in the education, you see us everywhere. And we were succeeding in a time of like 2 generations, let's say 2, 3 generations, to try to close the cultural gap, and the cultural gap, the economic gap, as much as possible. And you can see a lot of people from the community who are flourishing in Israel.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's really fascinating. I've tried to understand how I can have a similar sense of feeling to the, I'm basically from the UK, and I'm
Mhm.
I can look back at my family history. Perhaps we have some Celtic origins, we have some Viking origins, we have some,
Wow.
um, but we have all of these things. But sort of over time, you just everyone has a bit of this, and then it just gets lost. It gets forgotten. So if you imagine all those
Right.
traditions and everything, you just become like an amalgamous. You just become English. Or you become
Right.
British, or you become European, I guess, in many ways. And you tend we sort of we forget. I would love to know. In Celtic, there's different Celtic languages. There is the Norman conquest, which were basically Vikings that established a stronghold in France, and then
Wow.
they're the basis of the English royal family, who are basically Vikings. And it's such a rich history. We have Anglo-Saxons, but we all now are English. I'm trying to sort of have this feeling now that you have Ethiopian Jews, you have Jews from Libya, from all over the world, from Poland. You establish a state, a community, a homeland, and I wonder how many generations it'll be until you become Israeli.
Oh, that's a great question.
It's interesting,
You can,
right? I'm trying to think
yeah,
how it would feel, and I'm trying to see, when do you become, yeah, because I mean, the Ethiopian Jews have kept their customs and traditions and rituals and spiritual life for thousands of years. There was a
right,
strong identity there, and then how
right.
much does that? When does that start to change? If it does ever change?
Okay. So when Israel was established in 1948, they were trying to.
If you're looking to level up your surfing, JWC has got a couple of ways to get you moving forward. I'm running in-person surf coaching sessions here in Portugal with flexible dates, so if you're traveling through or planning a trip, we can lock in a few sessions and work on exactly what your surfing needs. And thanks to our collaboration with SurfRec, the AI robotic filming system now operating in Ribeira de Ilhas and Carcavelos, you can get footage of your sessions. Just send me 5 clips and I break down every detail for you. But even if you're not in Portugal, no problem. You can send me up to 5 waves from anywhere in the world. Surf trip to Indo, comp heats, or your local surf break. Even wave pools. If you got the footage, I'm happy to analyze it. If you want to dive deeper into SurfRec, check out our Podcast Portugal episode 50 with Zé Ferreira. To book surf coaching sessions, to find out more about our immersive surf training camps schedule, online video analysis program, and special JWC rates for using SurfRec, head to justinwestcoaching.com. Direct links in the show notes.
So, regarding the question that you have asked, is that first of all, at the beginning, when Israel was established in 1948, and during those years, they were trying to create the perfect Israeli, and they were trying to erase the history that each group have brought to Israel, and told them, now you are completely Israelis, you need to speak Hebrew, forget whatever you have experienced outside Israel in the diaspora, and you're going to be the perfect Israeli. But what happened is that it caused a lot of sadness and sorrow and disconnection from people, from themselves, and from their own story. And in order to feel welcome, to feel that you are belong, you needed to forget who you are. You need to forget your language, your traditions, your clothes. You need to change everything. And now to be the perfect Israeli. And we see, and of course, it's dissolved and it didn't happen anymore, because people understand that in order to be the perfect Israeli, you need to be perfectly, authentically yourself. And that happened also to Ethiopian Jews when they came to Israel. They told them, listen, your name is not in Hebrew. Your hair looks a little bit different. Maybe try to change that. Change that. What about your clothes? Your clothes, it's not so modern. So maybe try to change that as well. And when I was in second grade, my teacher asked me in front of all the class if I can change my name to Hebrew name. And I told her, my dad doesn't allow me. And she said, why? You know what? It's going to be in Hebrew. It's going to be easier for me and for the class to pronounce it. Let's give you a Hebrew name. Let's give you Bracha. What do you think? And I said to her, no, my dad doesn't allow me. And I didn't understand where I got the strength from, because in my class they have changed to another Ethiopian boy his name, and only in the recent years he returned to his name. And from that moment I didn't understand, what do I need to change myself in order to be accepted, in order to feel Israeli? And that experience shifted me from a very young age, that I know that I'm not going to give up on my own identity. Okay, I don't have a name in Hebrew, but it says something. It says the first light in the morning. And I'm not going to change whatever my parents gave me. And that happened also to Romanian Jews, to Jews that came from Morocco, that they needed to change their own identity, their own um their own journey, their own names, in order to feel accepted by the Israeli society and the people who were living here. And we can see that now there is like a reverse movement of people, that they're going and returning to their Amharic names. It's the Ethiopian names. They are starting to study more Amharic. It's the language that is spoken in Ethiopia, one of many. And they're starting to know what are the traditions that we were practicing in Ethiopia. I'm interested. I don't want people to tell me how to practice my Judaism. I want to know what were the spiritual leaders were doing in Ethiopia. And you can see that people are yearning and wanting to go back to their roots, because God created us diverse, and God created us in a way that it's on purpose. We have experienced lives and centuries of years outside Israel in the diaspora, in order that when we will return to Israel, we will bring those cultures, those traditions, and we will create a diverse and a colorful image of what is Israel. And we will create an expression of God and his beauty when he brought us back. So
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I mean, historically, if you look at Western civilization, Western countries, diversity has always been at the root of the strength and the success of many of these countries. The British Empire gets a lot of bad press, of course, and deservedly so. But there is a great strength in that the diversity that it created, and for years afterwards, and the welcoming of different peoples from all over the world, from all over the previous empire. It only made the foundations of the UK and Great Britain much stronger. And you look at the US; it's an immigrant, it's a country formed by immigrants forging a path to a better life, and that country is successful in many ways, and many ways not, but successful in many ways. And I think it's what you're saying here about Israel. It's like it's almost like it's a world story. It's an immigrant story. It's all of our stories, because we're all in some ways immigrants from somewhere. And I think it's and I think it's an important story for modern times, because many countries, many power dynamics are trying to get people to look more inward, not necessarily inward, more backward, I could probably say. But they're trying to say. I'm going to give you an example. It's probably easier to me to give an example. In Portugal, there is great strong tradition, a great strong cultural Portuguese identity, which is beautiful and brilliant and very important. And there is strong political ideas that they must protect that. And the only way to protect that is to stop and prevent other people with other cultures coming into Portugal and bringing their ways of life, their language, their looks, their cultures, their systems, and in some way thinking that is going to break Portugal's culture. Now, that's kind of crazy, because if you have such a paranoia that your culture is so weak that it's going to collapse because of new ideas and new peoples coming in, it's proven time and time again, from the Roman Empire to many empires, that it's the unity and the diversity of people, even on a biological level. It's the diversity of people that creates strength and vibrancy and culture and genetic diversity, even. And the story, I'm fascinated, because the story of the Jewish community from Ethiopia, having the ambition and the dream, the spiritual journey, the aliyah, to go to Israel. And once you arrive in Israel, you have another journey, another difficulty, be accepted, to find your voice, to assimilate, and then generations later, you are sort of learning your own history and learning the history of Israel and learning the histories of everybody, where everybody comes from. I think it's a universal world story, and I think we need to look at our own pasts and our own histories. Unfortunately, mine's it's not so. Ours is it's already, like, a lot of it's been culturally bleached, I could say. We've already been controlled, and we've already been changed, and that's partly why I like to go live in other cultures, because to get that inspiration, to learn a new journey, to understand new things. Yeah, it is a world thing, and I think we need to be careful. I think we need to be careful if you for the youth and for people growing up to be too nationalistic, because it's not helpful. It's not positive. I think, of course, humans, we're not perfect. We're all very different. Some of the things that create conflict and problems is our inability to communicate. And I think we try to assimilate everybody, and everybody becomes the same because it's easier to communicate.
Right.
But it's keeping diversity, but also creating channels of communication, I think, is
Right. And I think one of the ways
super cool.
to maintain a society is to have strong communities that they're supporting each other and they uplifting each other. And you can see it also in the Ethiopian Jewish community, where we are very communal, and that what we practiced in Ethiopia, that if someone is going to work in their fields, other comes to help him. If someone is getting married, everyone in the community comes to help him. And we also have it in Israel when I got married 5 months ago, and the whole community,
Congratulations.
thank you, and the whole community in my town came to help my parents to prepare the wedding, to prepare the food, to bring drinks, to prepare with logistics. So you know you're not alone. And also, the situation of mental health right now in the Western world is so bad, and because we're feeling alone, we're feeling the depression, the anxiety. And when you are united and you know who you are and you know that you are part of a people, part of a tribe, it brings strength to your mental stability.
And this is, but I mean, you're saying this, and I see the points, and I see the positivity and the beauty in what you're saying. But that very same argument could also be attributed to, for example, some of the more far right extremist beliefs in some European countries. They can say, "Well, this is our culture, this is my people, this is my tribe, and this is our space, and this is our land."
Mm-hmm.
And we want to stop these people coming in and trying to take it. It's interesting. There's always this balance between having a strong culture and having a strong identity and a
Can you
strong.
combine both cultures?
Exactly. Can you live side by side, or should you be more integrated, or should you be, what? How do we manage this as people?
I can see here in Israel when you have a lot of intermarriage couples, for example, Ethiopian Jew with Moroccan Jew, Russian Jew um, with Yemenite Jew, Indian Jew with Iraqi Jew, and it's a question how do you maintain your own traditions? So sometimes you're giving up on something that it's not that important to you, and sometimes you say no, that's important for me, and that's what I'm going to do. And you see that also the kids are maintaining life, that it's also this and also this, and it's more to know how to live in uncertainty and to be comfortable with development and changes.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And even, I guess, you might have Jews marrying a Palestinian Muslim, for example.
Yes, we have that in Tel Aviv, Jews who are marrying Arabs, and
Yeah.
Arabs, Muslims who are marrying Christians. But if you want to do that, you have to be extremely secular, you know?
Mm, yeah. I can almost create your own tribe. Yeah, it's interesting, and it's not. Israel is not unique in this. If you just look, only 20 years ago in the UK, there was fighting between Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland.
Wow.
Two different versions of Christianity, fighting each other over history of past tribal arguments, I guess you could call it, deaths and government depression and starvation, atrocities, and it's like, and now these things are over, but there was a big wall. They would build a big wall down the center of a street in Belfast, where you would have Catholics living on one side and Protestants on the other, and they would throw things at each other over the fence.
Wow.
But now they've managed to move past that. Northern Ireland still belongs to the Crown. It still belongs to I guess what you could call the Church of England, the Protestant Crown, and Southern Ireland is part of the European Union. It's a separate country in itself, Irish Republic.
Wow.
So it's a world thing. It's how do we all get along? How do we stay strong in our culture, but all get along? And I think the essence of all religion is actually that we should be peaceful and take care of our neighbors and all of these things. But there is some factors of society, of political whatever, that like to try to take these religious ideas and to somehow say, well, my religion is better than yours, and
Right.
and therefore use that in some way to gain power and to land and resources and these types of things. And
I think what you're doing right now with this podcast, it's what brings people together, because everything starts with education. So if I'm learning about your culture and you're learning about my culture, the possibilities that we will live peacefully will be higher.
Yeah. We, as humans, we have far more in common than we do. It's something that I got very, 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 my mind became very open with in living in Saudi Arabia. So, I lived in Saudi Arabia. I grew up there, but then I lived in the UK, went to university, and I returned after September 11th.
Wow.
And I lived in Saudi, and I worked in a particular job and I traveled to the south. Now, in the south, it's recommended that by the British government and everything, that you shouldn't go there because it's the hotbed of Al Qaeda.
Wow.
There's terrorist units down there. They're operating in certain villages in the south. And part of my job, I went there. I traveled there. I went to some of these villages, and you know what I found? I found that people coming out of their houses saying, where are you from? And I said, I'm from the UK. And they were like, please come share some food with us. Come break bread with us. Come and eat something. And I did not see, all I saw was families trying to earn a living, trying to take care of their neighbors, try to take care of their own families. I didn't see anything political. I felt in no danger whatsoever. Whether these were all stories that were made up, that actually none of this actually existed. It's very, very, very crazy, very interesting. And I realized in that moment, like humanity, we all have our needs, and I think on a human to human basis, we are almost as one. We are but it's when we start to try to dominate things, or when we try to be a little bit too tribal and to try and encroach on somebody else, another tribal area,
Yeah.
That's where the problems arise. Because, but actually, on a human basis, it's there's another point. Actually, I was reading about an ex-soldier who was in Afghanistan.
All right.
Who he found God. I think he was Christian. I'm not sure, but he found God. He got reborn. And part of his problem that he had was that he didn't understand that the government of the time, I think it was George Bush or whatever, they were telling him as a military to go over there and kill these people.
Oh,
and
wow.
he was like, okay, I'm going to go do that. I'm a soldier. That is my duty. I'm protecting my brother that's standing next to me. I'm protecting democracy and freedom and blah, blah, blah. And since then, since he's had a time of reflection and a period of like, how did I get convinced to go kill another human being when that human being is also probably in another situation, that human being might have come over and helped my family, or if we were neighbors, maybe I could have possibly helped that person. But it's these power structures that put the people against each other.
Right. Right.
And I think let's face it, like Israel has difficulties right now with the same thing, right?
Right. Right.
I don't know what the answer is. If we knew what the answer was, there would be much less pain in the world.
I think the answer is coming from the simple people, and the change comes from the bottom to the top, not from the top to the bottom. We will not expect that the government will promote peace or promote, I don't know, the end of the wars here. But if we would start to see each other as humans, and also if the Israel government will take responsibilities, and also the Palestinian Authority will take responsibilities in order to create a change, yes, we will have a better life here. But
It
there
comes from the
are,
people, doesn't it? It comes from the people. It's like a chicken and an egg. What comes first? Like
yeah, but there
the
are
education. Who
organizations
gives the
here.
education?
There,
Yeah.
there are organizations here who works to bring peace. If it's Palestinians come to Israeli homes and hear about the experience of people who lives here or lost their loved one by a terror attack, and a group of Israelis go to Palestinians' villages and they are sharing their lives and what their aspiration. So it's already start to happen. But you need to know that you also have a problem of terrorism that you need to eliminate, and with that you can't create it with diplomacy. So with the people, with the right people you can, but with people that only wants to kill you, that's a problem.
Mm. Yeah. It's just and it's that how do those people get to that point where they're so convinced that they believe that they're going to go to heaven if they kill you? This, for me, is something that I cannot understand.
Me too.
It's indoctrination, and this is what happens when it comes from top
I-
to bottom.
In
Who
Judaism,
writes the education?
you know that the life is sacred, not the death. You will do anything to save others' lives. Even in Saturday, we have laws that preventing you from doing a lot of actions or working on Saturday or doing labor. And if someone is in risk, you have the duty to break the law, to break the laws of the Bible in order to save him.
Hmm.
So the the life and the yearning to live in Israel is so strong that we are protecting each other, that we will do anything to bring back our brothers and sisters if they are in captivity, if they are in other country. So we will do anything because we appreciating life.
Yeah, I think it's in. I think it seems to be in the interest of governments to. It almost seems like it's the easy vote. If you are blaming others for problems, um, if you can pinpoint somewhere to address people's frustrations and anger. And I think, like you're saying, it's right. It's going to be down to the people to to reach their hand across the wall and start to speak to your neighbor and whoever they are from wherever they're from. Maybe it will take some kind of natural disaster or some sort of problem that brings us together because we have much more in common than we do.
Yeah,
And I think the players who are, let's face it, they're evil. Whoever these players are, that are evil, that are manipulating
yes,
people to be terrorists, and manipulating people to be anti this or anti that.
right.
Um,
And we should, as people, we have the responsibility to change their education system.
no, I think you're right. I think it's down to us individual people to tell stories to talk to different people, as many different people as we can, to understand, gain perspectives. You know, to have the right and the freedom of speech, I think is super important.
Right.
You know, even if
And
it's speech.
for example, in the Palestinian Authority, you don't have a freedom of speech. And if you are against Hamas, the terror organization, you will probably be killed immediately. So we, as the Israel Authority, the Israel nation, has this responsibility to save these people's lives.
Yeah.
So that's like an act that we can start to do. So if someone speaks against Hamas, okay, we got your back.
Yeah.
And that's a change. So more and more people will do that, and that will create a change. But we, as the nation that has more sources here, needs to take more responsibility by protecting the
innocent Palestinian people, I guess.
exactly, the innocent
Yeah.
Palestinian people.
And you are a believer that you feel Israel, you can open your arms, and the Palestinian people, Israelis, Ethiopian Jews, Libyan Jews, Christians.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
is
there are
Israeli
already
Arabs,
the
right? You can all live together.
yeah, in the building of my aunt, there are Arabs. She lives in Tel Aviv. Also Haifa, you have Nazareth, you have Akko, where Jews and Arabs live together, and they sometimes they're learning together. And you have 2 million Arab citizens who lives in Israel, and they can vote. They can go to universities. In my class, in my university, I had 3 Arabs. One of them was Palestinian, and we were doing project together. I respected her, she respected me. Of course, we put politics at the side, but when you put human as human, you see, okay, we are working together. We are in the same class
Exactly.
together. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And you know what, with politics, how do we really know what it is as well? Like, how do we know what the truth really is?
Personally, I
Unless you
decided to
personally
believe.
experienced it. Yeah.
Personally, I decide to believe to no one, and I decide to believe to the people that I see, the people that I know, and try not to get information from politics and from the media that
Mm.
that creates division between people.
Yeah. That's very true. I think it's hard. And then what do you say to the Israeli family whose sons or daughters have been captured by Hamas, or what do you say to a Palestinian whose house and building, grandparents, has been destroyed by an Israeli missile? It's how do you talk to the people who've had real trauma from conflict, and it's how do you bring them to the table to sit? Because I think that's the key, isn't it? Really, because more conflict is more pain, more people with pain. It's like a snowball effect. It just gets worse and worse and worse.
Right.
And people with real life pain and experience and trauma, are not going to be able to think straight. And rightly so. They're going to be full of anger and hate, and they're not going to be expected to sit down in school together and be reasonable with somebody who they see is being the cause, or they can attribute their anger to. Yeah, it's very complicated, but yeah, but it's important, and I think we need to talk about it. And I think that
It is
your
important,
storytelling is beautiful, and it's so important. The story of the specifics of your story of the Jewish Ethiopian cause in Israel is like it's like a tale of that we can all relate to, and I think we should all learn and know more about, because this is a tale of humankind.
Mhm.
When we all migrated from Africa. We were all immigrants. We all went on a journey. We all went on a layar for whatever reason. We've all been on, whether it's to cross an ocean to discover the US, or we're Vikings to seek better farmland. If we were traders to go to China, if we were hunter gatherers, chasing the buffalo across whatever plain of the steppes of Russia.
Yeah.
It's a human story, and I think. Thank you very much for sharing it with us.
Thank you so much for you, Justin, for creating this space for promoting peace and promoting diversity and promoting the stories of people that usually is untold. So this is why I appreciate you for bringing me here. Thank you so much.
It's been a real lesson for me. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is Justin West from Podcast Portugal. Out. Did you know that Portuguese bank accounts can sometimes be frozen by the authorities? As someone who's traveled extensively and now runs a business here in Portugal, I value freedom, seamless usability, and bulletproof security. That's why I can't say enough good things about Revolut. With a Revolut account as your backup, you'll still be able to pay bills, receive payments, and keep everything running smoothly, even if you're not in the country. Revolut gives you multi-currency accounts, lets you spend in over 150 currencies at interbank rates, and provides advanced security features like instant card freeze, disposable virtual cards, and safe online shopping. And an app that's as intuitive as it gets. To help support Podcast Portugal, and if you're thinking about setting up a bank account as a backup, click the link in the show notes to sign up for a new Revolut account. It's a win-win situation. You get all the benefits of Revolut, and every time someone signs up, Revolut rewards Podcast Portugal with €40. Revolut, freedom in your pocket. Sign up today and show your support for Podcast Portugal. Don't let it get burned.